Every year, I meet CAT aspirants who are doing everything they are supposed to do. They read the newspaper, the EON and whatnot. They solve RCs every day, verbal ability questions. They take their mocks regularly. They watch strategy videos, and yet, month after month, their VARC scores remain stuck. 12 marks, 18 marks, maybe 24 on a good day. Now, if this is happening to you, the natural conclusion that you will arrive at is that you need to work harder, right? But what if the problem is not lack of effort? What if the problem is that some of the most popular advice that you get from other CAT aspirants, from mentors, is incomplete specifically for you? So today I want to discuss 5 pieces of conventional wisdom that I hear all the time. Uh, None of those pieces is completely wrong. In fact, most of them do contain some rather valuable insights. But if you follow them blindly, if you do not customize them, personalize them, they can actually slow down your progress. And once we have discussed these challenges, these myths, I will show you what I believe is a much better roadmap for the next 5 months that you have to the CAT exam. So let's move over to the studio where I'll go ahead and talk about those myths and some of those things that will make them complete and work for you. So welcome to CAT 26 VARC Masterclass, where I talk about why most of the VARC advice, despite being all right, fails for you and how you can go on to fix it over the course of next 150, 160 days that you have. And in the process, I am going to talk about those 5 myths that are actually preventing your progress. So let's look at the pattern that a lot of people face. Month after month, they go through exact same scores. So I see people who struggle to get at times even 12 marks. And on an average day, they probably get 15 marks. On a good day, that may go up to 24. On a fabulous, great day, it can go to 30, but then they struggle to go beyond that and they struggle to replicate this particular performance. And at this juncture, they come back and they ask things like, yeah, whatever you told me, I did. So you are essentially doing everything right. So why aren't the scores moving? Why do you feel nervous, agitated, anxious, frustrated? So the issue is not the effort, the issue is your strategy. So let's go ahead and talk about that. So one of the myths that we so very often get is just read more. And a lot of us actually go ahead and stick to just one source, EON essays, and then we continue to read it day in and day out, yet we realize that it's not working out. So our assumption here is that if we read more, we'd automatically get better VARC scores. But this assumption is not 100% accurate. So it is a skill driven area, and therefore, yes, you need to practice. But if you're not practicing in the right way, if you're not reading the right way, you may not really see that desired improvement. So what CAT actually rewards is something else. So when you read an article, are you able to figure out the key point or the main idea made by the author? How the author has exactly gone on to organize his thoughts, so in case it all leads to a conclusion, is there a piece of evidence that supports it? Are there any assumptions involved here? How can this argument be weakened? How can it be strengthened? What kind of things can be concluded from it and the decision steps that follow? So basically, CAT tests your analytical reading and not just your reading volume. And therefore, this is one of those switches that we need to make and that a lot of us at times fail to make. So do not just read more. Read something which is at an appropriate level of challenge for you. Read in order to get a mental overview of the entire passage, including its framework, and then start analyzing it a little more deeply. Now, myth number 2 is solve more RCs. I think all of us have been there. A lot of you ask me in these YouTube sessions, sir, how many passages should I go on to solve? And I typically start you guys with 10 RC passages a week. And then when you struggle with accuracy, I notice that you at times have a tendency to increase your volume of practice. So instead of 10 RC passages a week, you may move over to 15, 20, 25 RC passages a week, if you're really committed. But then let me give you a particular interesting piece of equation. So normally I see most of the aspirants spending 85% of their times solving RCs, whereas they spend only 15% of their time reviewing their performance in those passages. On the other hand, when I talk to the toppers, and I've produced hundreds of them, I mean, just this year, we have more than 317 students joining top B schools. When I look at that, I notice that they have a large chunk of time devoted to reviewing their performance. And when we say reviewing, what is it that they go on to do? Huh? So improvement happens during the review. It's not just about the attempt. So what exactly it is that they do? They probably ask themselves things like, hey, why did I choose a particular option? What was my reason behind it? Now, why this? This helps you shift from marking or choosing your answers intuitively towards choosing answers on the basis of a very logical, rational process. As I often say in my classes, when you choose an answer choice, imagine yourself in a situation where you will have to explain that answer to Vikrant. So if you have a sound explanation, choose it. Otherwise, work harder. Questions like, why was the wrong answer tempting? What made me choose that? And above all, what exactly is the root cause behind this mistake? What went wrong? Do I lack the relevant skill? Do I lack the relevant competency? Do I understand the question? What went wrong? And one very important thing that you need to then look at is the pattern in your mistakes. So, I mean, you can get a particular question type wrong once in a while, and that's still okay. But if you are getting that particular question type wrong repeatedly, then it very clearly indicates that you lack the requisite ability to tackle that question type. So is it the main idea question that you're making a lot of mistakes in? Is it the inference questions that you're making a lot of mistakes in? Where exactly are those mistakes coming from? And alongside that, along with the question type, also keep an eye on the subject matter of the passage. Okay, so is it the philosophy passage that bothers you more? Is it science? Is it economics? Is it political theory? Is it anthropology? Is it ecology, biology? What? And that can also give you certain pointers that can help you take a corrective action eventually. Then let's move over to the third myth. A lot of people believe that their problem is speed. Now, I would actually venture in to say that this is a wrong belief to have, particularly for exams like the CAT and the ZAT, where we have adequate time. A lot of people think if I just read faster, I'd be able to attempt more questions that should lead to better scores, and that translates into speed training, increasing your words per minute exercises, mastering those skimming and skipping techniques. And mind you, all of these are useful, but then they are not the key. They are not things that you should go ahead and prioritize. Instead, at this juncture, I'd rather have you working on a deeper comprehension of the passage, because when you work on that deeper comprehension, you're automatically able to read faster. And once again, for exams like the CAT and the ZAT, the speed is not exactly that critical. If you're talking about something like NMAT, if you're talking about, say, Maharashtra CET, yes, definitely do work on these things, but then do not work on speed at the cost of increasing your comprehension. So the key takeaway from this is, I want you to prioritize comprehension over speed. So if you have to choose between one of the two, choose this. And then if time permits, you can definitely go ahead and put in some speed reading exercises too, which I have shared in my classes. Now, myth number 4, mocks will improve my VARC scores. If I go ahead and write more mocks, I will go on to improve. So I see a lot of you starting with section tests, starting with mock tests, but then what we fail to realize is that mocks are a mirror. Mocks are a diagnostic tool. A mock tells you where you stand. And mind you, they are really very important, but then they tell you where exactly you stand vis-a-vis the competition when you get the percentile. They they can be used to figure out a pattern in your mistakes and the weaknesses that you have. They help you simulate the exam conditions. They help you build test taking stamina. There are a lot of advantages to them, but at the end of the day, it is like standing in front of a mirror. If the mirror tells you that something is wrong, you need to take some action in order to fix it. So mind you, it is a bit like a thermometer. Right? A thermometer tells you the temperature, but then it does not go on to cure the fever. How do you cure the fever? You cure the fever by working on some other things. Most important of them is analyzing your mock thoroughly, or what I typically call a deep mock review. So if you have spent a couple of hours writing the mock, you'd usually require 4 to 6 hours of analysis after that. And that analysis will tell you what your problem areas are. And once you figure out those problem areas, you'd be able to focus on some targeted practice in order to improve in those areas. Once you figure out those patterns, you can take corrective actions which are going to be impactful for you. Right? So, please keep in mind that when it comes to mocks, merely measurement, merely writing is not improvement. You need to go ahead and fix those errors as well. And then here comes the fifth myth, not mix, and that is that progress is linear. So if I have studied for a week, I should see a corresponding improvement in my scores over the course of next week. So when we think of scores and time, this is the kind of graph that a lot of us assume it to be. For the last week, 2 weeks, I've put in the effort. I wrote a section test, scores should have gone up, but then it did not. And that's because this is not the right graph to follow for us. So what is the right graph? You do realize that it is not linear. So there are going to be days and weeks when you may not see a noticeable improvement, particularly in VARC, because it depends on skills. So the skills can at times take a while. So you're putting in the effort every day, pouring in time, sharpening those skills. Your scores are plateaued, and suddenly you reach a point where your skill has upgraded itself to a level where it suddenly shows tangible results. So I'd see people who, for example, have not really mastered the art of creating a mental overview of the passage. If you start today, the truth is it will take you at least 6 weeks to become comfortable. So somewhere around that 6 week mark, 7 week mark, maybe 8 week mark, until then you won't see any improvement, but then your score will jump suddenly because now you start getting all of those main idea questions right. And it will also help you shave off some time in RCs because every other question type also requires that skill. So you would achieve that breakthrough and there will be a jump. Then you put in some effort, scores won't improve for a while, maybe a week, 2 weeks, 3 weeks, and then suddenly there is another jump. So you need to remain patient. Do not change your strategies haphazardly for no good reason very quickly. And wherever you are stuck, you can actually go ahead and talk to us and we can help you move towards the right direction. So please remember that reading ability is like compound interest. Gains appear slowly, but then suddenly you reach this point where you are going to get amazing, awesome results. So the key is, once again to reiterate, things like just reading more, solving more RCs, speed, more mocks, linear progress, they won't work. So what will work? What we need to ask right now is, as a serious CAT aspirant, what should I do over the next 150 days in order to create or make a real difference? So let's go ahead and give you a broad overview of the 150-day roadmap. Let's break it down into 4 phases if you're starting today. But we have this one single solitary goal, and that is to go beyond 99 percentile, if possible, go beyond 99.7 percentile, because that's the stage where the role played by a profile starts getting a tinier share of your shortlisting criteria. Your CAT score will then go ahead and count for a lot more. So for the first 45 days, develop your reading intelligence. If your accuracy in RCs, particularly comprehension based questions, is not great, make sure that this is something that gets your priority, right? Learn to comprehend, learn to read critically, learn to create a mental overview, learn to create those subject matters which are a cause of which have been a cause of problem for you. And once you have gone through this over the course of next 45 days, develop your question intelligence. Okay, so you notice one part of it is skill building, right? Comprehension, critical reading, all that. But then the next part now is, do I understand all the different questions that get asked in the exam along with the kind of ability required? So look at all those questions. Main idea, strengthen, weaken, inference, tone. Why has the author used this particular paragraph? What is the purpose of this paragraph in an overall scheme of things? Do you understand those questions well? And in case there is a pattern in your mistakes, go on to spot them too. Then days 91 to 120 is where I would advise you to start moving towards section tests, and on the basis of the results that you get from those section tests, the errors that you make, you go on to fix those. And finally, the last 45 days go toward writing full length mocks, where you now focus on, apart from developing the test intelligence, now you focus on your test taking strategy. You experiment with different approaches. Should I attempt RCs first or VA first? Should I do mix and match? Within RCs, how do I prioritize passages? Within VA, what are the areas of my strength? What are the areas of my weakness? You start asking yourself those questions, where the goal basically is to build the skill of understanding complex arguments, and that too under time pressure. And that's something that you witness during your phase 3 and phase 4. So all of these together will eventually lead to a great result. So the bottom line is, students who go on to score more than 99 percentile, they're not looking for techniques or shortcuts. They go on to build better skills, because even those techniques work only when you have these skills. Without the skills, even the techniques won't really do much for you. So spend the next 150 days building these skills deliberately. And when you do that, you would notice that the scores will follow, and we will keep bringing more sessions for you for each one of those specific concerns as well. But then how would I know what your specific concern is? You need to reach out to us through the comments down below, or you know that I am also there on Telegram, and feel free to reach out to me in that group, and we would love to go ahead and customize those sessions for you then. So that's it from me today. Happy preparation. Stay safe, stay focused, and even more importantly, stay in touch. Until we meet the next time,